Well, what's happening, everyone? Welcome back for another episode of the Chamber Podcast. We have a great show for you today. We are actually talking about one of my favorite domains, marketing. And joining me to do that is the owner and founder of True Grit Marketing, Rachel Grit.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited. So when I was actually had a conversation with Gavin, and he told me that you're coming on the show, and so I took a look at your website and kind of what you're doing, and just in a high level overview, kind of you do marketing a little bit differently than I would say most people in the area. So just walk me through what that engagement looks like for people.
Sure. So I like to take a little bit of a different approach instead of working together month to month, which can drag out, can be very expensive, especially for smaller businesses or businesses just getting started. What I like to do is package everything in one day with the very intense focus of helping business owners find the next right thing, the next right step for their marketing, and then executing on that. So, you're getting a lot of this low-hanging fruit, a lot of these things that are very easy for someone like me who's been doing marketing for a very long time. But for a smaller or a newer business owner, those things aren't as obvious. So the whole point is quick wins, dealing with the low-hanging fruit, and making measurable progress and transformations in one day.
So where did your marketing path start? What got you interested in the art form?
Yeah, so my parents got me a typewriter when I was 7. And I created the Grit Gazette, our family newspaper. It ran for several issues before I found another project that caught my fancy, but wrote my first ad copy then. It was for a course on horses. My mom was my only student, but I still consider that a success. But that was really where I fell in love with words.
Yeah, well, as long as one person shows up, it's a win, right?
Exactly, yeah.
So walk me through. So there's a lot of small business owners that listen to this podcast. A lot of people that are even people that are just getting rolling. What are some of those low-hanging fruits, as you put it, that people should be paying attention to?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing and the step that I like to take first with everybody that I work with is organizing, getting a handle on what the current marketing efforts are, really taking stock of what's actually working, where is the effort driving actual results, really getting a handle on that. So organizing, simplifying, and then amplifying. Getting a handle on things, seeing and analyzing what's working, and then directing the effort so that you're pouring the most effort into the things that are actually driving results and actually making a difference.
Yeah. If you had to give a couple of pro tips for small businesses, what are some things that you'd encourage people to start looking at?
Absolutely. So the biggest thing for me, and something that's so easy and requires pretty much zero effort, is tracking. So getting even free tools like Google Analytics, Microsoft Clarity, things like that. Even if you're not using the data yet, by the time you're ready to, you'll have historical data from what people are doing on your website, all of that good stuff. Yeah. Even if you don't need the numbers now, you will in the future.
No, that's good. Yeah, I tell people all the time, and this is a good tip for listeners, when you're building a website, we've done, at this point over 300 at our agency, and more often than not, people are missing Google Search Console integrated as well as Google Analytics, and both of those are missing. And just very basically for the listeners, Google Search Console indexes your website so that way you can push updates to Google much faster. And Google Analytics, as Rachel said, gives people insights into what's happening on that page. And those are 2 free tools. There's no cost to them. And Google recommends that you install them. They want you to use it. And that's super important. So, Rachel, looking at your business, what's been one of the most fun things that's come out of one of these all-day intensive sessions?
Something I really love doing is helping business owners figure out the content piece and helping translate their personalities and their stories into content that can be used to drive their business. A lot of people are uncomfortable in front of a camera. I worked with a client for a couple of years he was a former engineer. He was a farmer. He was, a good old boy from Atlanta, just very kind of dry. And I was able to tease out his personality and get him to even record these funny reels where he's pretending to talk to tomatoes as the VeggieTales theme song is playing in the background, and stuff like that really worked. And he found that he enjoyed doing things like that. So I would tell him, all right, here's a prompt. Here's what you're going to do. And he'd be like, oh, all right, I trust you. And then it would get several, tens of thousands of views, things like that. I love helping people connect their personality to their business and cut out some of that, this is my job, this is what I have to do. We started businesses for a reason, right? connecting back the practical piece of the business to what we love doing and making it fun is just, it's really fun for me.
You mentioned that you have another project that you used to have and then stopped, and then it was rekindled while you were in Guatemala.
Yes. Yep.
Tell me about that.
Yeah. So,
And
sorry.
by the way, real quick, you mentioned that in the pre-show. So if listeners are like, when did she mention that? It wasn't when we were on air. So that's where. So go ahead.
Yes.
Sorry.
So essentially, I had graduated dietitian school, and as I was applying for jobs, I started working with my child's father, and he had a sales and marketing business, and I just kind of started working with him on projects and fell in love with what I was doing. I was excited about what I was doing for the first time in years. And long story short, we randomly decided one day to sell our condo and move to Guatemala. We bought one-way tickets, but we were there for 3 months because we missed our dog.
Real quick, what was that decision-making process like? I'm just curious, like when you're like, you know what we're going to do? Guatemala.
So his best friend lived down there with his wife. And so we knew people down there. We knew that it was a beautiful place, kind of a slower pace of life. Our business was virtual, so we could work from anywhere. And just kind of decided, okay, let's do it. Like one night he said, okay, we're having realtors over to the house just to look at it and see, just to see what our options are. And we signed papers that night. And that was right after the big volcano had exploded. So our families were panicked. It was the most transformative experience of my life.
Yeah. Real estate was probably cheaper down there too at that point.
Oh yeah, big time.
So 3 months you were down there, missed the dog.
Yes.
And while you were down there, you were recording YouTube videos?
Yes. So I started a YouTube channel for our families and friends to kind of keep tabs on what we were doing. And it just kind of picked up more steam than I was anticipating. And so I started kind of branching out into more content. And I'd had a blog previously where I had done a couple of posts about my ADHD and different tools and resources. And that was the content that got the most attention. And that was the stuff that people were leaving comments like, oh, this is so helpful for me. Can you talk about this? Yeah. This really made a difference for me. And so it just kind of accidentally happened.
Took on a life of its own.
Yeah.
And then going to where you're at now, how does that translate and kind of fit into everything else that you're doing?
So it comes back to marketing and how do I want to phrase this? I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe what I'm doing because like it doesn't have like a business name. It's just my name.
Yeah, no. And I think too, like I don't necessarily think when we were talking before that it like fits in where it's like a piece of the marketing. I just think it's another thing that you do. Like it's another thing that you're passionate about. Yeah,
absolutely. So essentially the purpose is helping women in particular, men as well, but women in particular who have ADHD kind of figure out how their brains work and learn to work with their brains and cut down on the noise and the chaos in their lives, specifically from the ADHD side of things with things like strategies, different tools that have been helpful. I've walked a lot of roads and I've lived a lot of lives in my short time on earth. And so I'm able to kind of like hunt and find different tools and figure out what works for different people. And it's just so much fun. And so that's kind of the direction that this organically has gone.
On that, like what would you say are a couple of things that are contributors to the noise?
Everything in this world is so fast paced. Everything from the moment we wake up, we're looking at screens, we're taking in more information than anyone ever in the history of the world. It's really cool the amount of information we have, and it can do a lot of good, but it also contributes so much to the chaos in our minds, in our souls, in our spirits, in our bodies. It takes a toll on us. It takes a serious toll on us. So everything from social media to comparing ourselves to other people in our lives, it's pervasive.
Yeah. No, we're certainly overloaded, and if you let it creep in, like me, there's 10,000 notifications a day. It feels like, and if you let it take over, like you can just feel like you're constantly bombarded if you don't have boundaries.
Absolutely.
So, looking forward to the next year, so as we're recording this, it's actually Halloween tomorrow, and as we're recording this, what are you looking at for 2025? Like, what's on the roadmap? Do you think that far ahead, or are you just kind of like, I'm just going to roll with it? Like, what does the planning process look like?
That's a great question. So my life has shifted course completely so many times that I take a little bit of a laissez-faire approach. I like to plan, scripture says a man plots his path, but the Lord directs his steps. That's very, very much the direction my life has taken, where I do have some things on the docket that I'm really excited about. But there is also a lot of a disclaimer. This is flexible. This is not the 100% set in stone plan.
Understood. Yeah. Okay. And then if you had to guess which one of these two verticals do you think you're going to be investing more time in? Which one do you find yourself enjoying more?
I've been spending most of my time and most of my hands-on effort on the new project. So rachelgrit.com is the website that I have been working on, and that all the resources that I'm putting together are available on. But at the same time, as I've kind of taken my foot off of the gas of the marketing piece, it's just kind of more has started to happen. I have several intensives coming up that I'm really excited about. And I just gave a talk at the Chamber of Commerce and I'm here. And so there's kind of been a lot more traction, even though I haven't been seeking it out on the marketing front. Yeah. But most of my hands-on effort right now is in the ADHD side of things.
How did the talk at the Chamber go?
It went really well. It was really fun. Actually, my realtor ended up being there spontaneously. I didn't know he was going to be there, so it was fun to see him. But we had a really good conversation, and we were able to dig into a lot of topics that, these business owners hadn't really forayed into, or that just they were so focused on running their businesses that, the marketing piece and organizing it hadn't even been on their radar.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Well, good. Well, Rachel, anything else you want listeners to know before we close today? And we'll absolutely make sure that both links to the websites, all the information you provided are in the show notes as well. So that way there's an easy reference for them there as well. But is there anything else you want them to know?
Yeah, so I did create a workbook. It's a guided journal. It's a free download. It takes 1 hour of time. And the purpose of it is to find, identify, and make a plan to eliminate sources of noise and chaos in your life. And that's just at rachelgrit.com/noise journal. And I put a lot of time into it. It's free. I've gotten really solid feedback on it. So I'd really love for people to take a look at that.
That's awesome. Well, Rachel, it was a fantastic conversation. I appreciate you coming in today.
Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. All right, everyone, that's going to wrap up this week's edition of the Chamber Podcast. I certainly appreciate you watching. If you want to know more about Rachel and her businesses, you can find that in the show notes. Apart from that, we'll catch you next week with another show. Take care.